All right, so today we are super excited to change the format a little bit, and we have Heather Waxman joining us here. Heather, will you tell us a little bit about yourself? And
I would love to.
All right.
So my name's Heather Waxman, and it's wonderful to be here with all of you. I'm grateful to be here. And I'm one of the family therapists on staff at Causeway in Westport, Connecticut.
How do you feel about Causeway?
Dream. It's a dream to work at Causeway because Causeway embodies its name.
Ooh, say more about that.
It truly is a collaborative space. Like it's a space and a community that lives in integrity with its values. And that's to me like what really makes working at Causeway like super, super special and a blessing. So thank you for having me.
So let's talk about resilience.
Cool.
What is resilience? What's your definition of resilience?
Do we do the mic slide? Sure. So we have a bulletin board downstairs. Thank you. Sorry. We have a bulletin board wall downstairs with like all the pictures of the kids and us and our friends and all the things. And then just like some kind of tchotchke stuff that we think is kind of cute or cool. And so on the bulletin board wall, there's a license plate picture. And it's Mike Tyson knocking somebody out. And it says, everybody has a plan until you get punched in the face. I think that to me is resilience. So life can be easy for everybody. And in seasons of our life, it absolutely is. Things move smooth, relationships go well, the ball just kind of bounces your way. But that's not really what life is. And so resilience to me is when you get punched in the face by life, how do you respond and how do you move through it? And I think the people who are resilient are those who can absorb a blow or 2 or 10 or 25 and just keep moving through it with the knowledge that they're going to get to where they're going eventually. And it might look different than they thought, and it might require more energy than they thought. But they're absolutely going to get there because they'd rather die than quit. That's resilience to me.
And that's the podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
Truth.
What do you got for resilience?
You ready? I get knocked down and then I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. I get knocked down, but I get up again. You're never going to keep me down. Who sang it?
Chumbawamba, baby. Oh, yes.
We were trying to figure that out the other day.
Chumbawamba.
That's right.
Right. We said Smash Mouth.
Yeah.
I tell you what, same era.
Right?
Same
Yes.
era, similar genre.
Yeah. Yep.
But yeah, that's
Yeah.
great.
So
I was a child at the time, just so you know.
we won't go with how old I was, probably much older. I just echo everything that you're saying. And we were talking about this a little earlier about the bamboo metaphor. When I think about resilience, when I think about a lot of things, I think about nature because I think nature is just embodies a lot of the life lessons that we're here to learn. And so, bamboo is this, it seemingly looks like this thin, like rod, right? That you could easily break. Yeah. And it is one of the most resilient trees out there. It is so deeply, deeply rooted. It has such a strong foundation, yet it can flex and bend in ways that other trees will just snap and break. And so in storms, you can see how it flexes and bends in it, but it is still rooted and strong. And so that's how I think of resilience, is just the ability to be rooted, to be knocked around by whatever the storm of life is throwing at us, to move with it. Sometimes it means we're down on the ground, but to your point, we get back up again. That's resilience to me.
Chumbawamba, ladies and gentlemen.
Chumbawamba.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
What about you?
Yeah, I feel similarly to what you've both said, that resilience is really about experiencing distress, discomfort, intensity, change, and transition, and feeling the stress that all of those incur, and also like moving through it in such a way that you actually learn what life is teaching you. That you're not just like white knuckling your way through it, that you're feeling the distress of it, but you're also like receiving the lessons that it's here to teach you.
That's good stuff. So in your work with young men at Causeway and families at Causeway, why do you think young men are struggling to be resilient right now?
A lot of reasons. I think, I think the most obvious one is that, in COVID, parents became very hyper consumed with their children's and their sons' ability to continue on, and kids were so, impacted by the circumstances that it left an imprint on young men. So I think parents became very aware of and ready, willing, and able to assist their sons in whatever capacity they could. That's one piece. I think there's also a desire to solve for, as opposed to allowing young men to learn for themselves, right? I believe that much of it is rooted in parental anxiety, wherein if they, give their kid too much room, their kid is going to, make the wrong decision or, do something that will have lasting consequences or, kind of move their trajectory from, the angle that it needs to be headed towards.
Can I stop you?
Yeah,
for a
sure.
second? Do parents think that their child is going to fuck up the trajectory of the rest of their life and that's why they have to step in?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, I absolutely think so. 100%. Yeah. And so I think one very good example would be kids who are academically underperforming, particularly in well-resourced communities, where parents are, have access to, different supports. So a kid has a, C- in a class, right? I think it's very difficult for a parent to have a hands-off approach, allow the kid to take the initiative on his own, let him fail, let him succeed, but eat the consequences. And so I think parents, particularly anxious parents, will often rush to solve, implement wraparound support, overextend on the kid's behalf. And then what we see often is that when the support dissipates as the kid transitions to college, the kid has no fucking idea what to do, how to initiate, how to manage the situations, because those supports have been orchestrated by the parental system. So, I believe, parents typically overextend because they're afraid of the consequences that a kid's decision is going to have on their future, and I think that's nearsighted.
Yeah. I think it also, when I think about the families that we see, there is it's anxiety, but it's also fear, right? We talked a little bit about this, I think, in one of the previous episodes. Is that they're parenting from a place of fear. Because they don't want their son to experience discomfort or distress because they're not sure how they're going to experience it, and so they don't know whether to push, they don't know whether to pull back. They have a really hard time sitting in their own discomfort around seeing their son in discomfort, and I think that's a big one. And of course, like you were saying, I think it robs that young man of developing the skills required to be able to embody resilience across the lifespan.
So I want to talk about helping young men build resilience, but as you were speaking about parents not allowing that, almost by nature of their actions, how can a parent help prepare a young man to be resilient without undoing all of the things, right?
You want to take that one?
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of what you said.
Sure.
I think as a parent, it starts with you as the parent. And I think it's first about looking at your own relationship with distress and discomfort, because you're going to inevitably project that onto your child.
Yeah, that's good.
And if your okayness and feeling okay inside of yourself is constantly dependent on other people feeling okay, then you're going to carry that into your relationship with your child. And it's going to play out in such a way that whenever you're child is teetering on the edge of their comfort zone and moving into their discomfort zone, you're going to organize yourself to stop them in some way because you're uncomfortable with their discomfort. So I think it really starts with you as a parent really creating a right relationship with discomfort and then reframing that for your child and teaching them lessons that discomfort's not good or bad. Distress is not good or bad. It's actually just a natural part of life. And being able to equip them to sit in that and to struggle. And then as the parent, being able to manage your own discomfort with watching them sit and struggle with that so that they can develop that resilience.
Yeah. It is a balance. Like, I think it's a fine balance of when do they require you to intervene versus when do they require you to back off? It is a fine balance. And I think part of it is, like, obviously parents have to give themselves grace that they're sometimes going to overfunction. Like, that's the natural, because like you said, was it last week? You said something about, like, I don't know how to do this. I've never done this before.
Totally. Right.
But I think that if parents can just catch themselves, if they can notice in themselves when they feel that moment of, like, oh, this is really, really hard, and hold back, I think that's an important first step.
Yeah.
Can you guys tell me about a time where you've been sitting across from a parent and you were like, and they intervened and you thought, like, that's the worst. That's literally the worst thing you could have done for your child.
I got a good one, I think. So, so I coach football. I coach my boys in flag football, and we have two teams. We have a 8, 9, 10 team, and then an 11, 12, 13 team. So we had a kid come on 5 weeks into the season. 5 weeks. And, you know, bless his heart, this guy probably had never seen or touched a football literally in his whole life. So the league thought it prudent to pair this young man with a mental health professional such as myself, who could be patient, take this gentleman under his wing, move things along. There was also some issues in the family system. I think the parents were getting through a divorce. So, like, here's a bag of shit. See what you can make of it, right? And so I was very, very patient with the kid, was extraordinarily communicative with the mom. At least I tried to be, really kind of bringing him into the fold. Although a football coach can only be so patient. So, you know, we brought the kid along. You know, obviously he wasn't going to play very much, but the mom overextended, in my opinion, and came to me before the first game and said, listen, I want to make sure my son gets the exact allotted snaps that he's required to play. And I said, okay, no problem. Like, we'll get him in the game as best as we can. Put him in the game, first play. He doesn't have his mouthpiece in, and we get a 5-yard penalty. And it's in a pretty big spot, right? And so I grabbed the kid, like, he comes off the field. I grabbed him by his jersey and just said, you know, I talked to him like a football coach would talk to another player who made a similar kind of mistake. The mother then went to the league, reported me for yelling at her son, said that I disrespected him in front of, you know, however many people were at the game, demeaned him, and that he doesn't respond to feedback in that way, and that, you know, she would never tolerate that kind of behavior from another individual in his life or a football coach in general. And so I got a stern talking to from the league officials, and they asked me to reach out to her and try to smooth the situation over. So I did. And I called her and apologized, and she blasted me for a half hour straight and said I was the worst coach she's ever seen. Said that I clearly didn't care about the kids, said that, you know, it was outrageous for me to reprimand her son for not having his mouthpiece in, which I informed her was a safety issue and he could have got hurt very badly. And you know, continued to, you know, kind of verbally bash me for however many more minutes till I said I had to go because I was in the parking lot of practice. Suffice to say, she ripped the kid off the team the next day and made him quit. And so I think that mom has unfortunately modeled for that young man that it's okay to point the finger at everybody when you make a mistake and never take accountability for yourself. And to me, that is the exact opposite of what you want to do when cultivating a resilient young man.
Mm-hmm.
You want to give a kid the example of raising his hand first and thinking to himself what he should have and could have done differently in the situation, or let alone what might have impacted an individual in a position of authority to make a decision like I made in terms of communicating in that fashion, you know? So robbing your son of his own ability to take accountability for himself and his behaviors is not something that you should do if you want to promote building a resilient kid, you know?
That's a great example.
So.
Yeah. I think we see a ton of families where where that happens.
Just meeting with one this morning.
Yeah, yeah. In what way do you feel like there was an opportunity that they didn't take? Or
So I think like in this particular family system, the pattern of interaction that has become normal is mom and dad pepper son with a bunch of advice and suggestions. They pursue him with that. And as any 19-year-old young man would, he resists their advice and their suggestions. And that became so extreme before we started working together in family therapy that he would get very like depressed and appear to be really helpless in terms of like completing homework assignments. Because he was never given the chance to just like find his way through.
Yeah.
And so we've been doing work together since, for the past 3 months on helping them to, I think like this is one of the greatest tips for parents who are struggling with this is instead of telling your kid what to do and giving advice and suggestions, ask agentic questions. Ask questions that place the agency in your child's hands. So if like in this case, he would send them texts that would also organize them to pepper him with suggestions and advice. He would say something like, and it happened this past weekend, he sent them a text that said, I'm really struggling with this paper right now, and I'm not sure if I can get through it, et cetera, et cetera. And the parents have been changing. And so the mom, rather than saying like, okay, like I'm going to get on the phone right now and I'm going to do this, 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 you should do that, that, that. She said, do you need our help? And he was able to respond and say, no, I just need to say that I'm struggling. I'll get through it.
That's really good.
And he finished the paper.
Let's go.
So good.
That's really
That's
good.
so good.
Let's go.
So that's like a simple, like not so simple, because this is like an ingrained pattern that they've all been working to shift. That requires the parents to step back and trust the son, but also the son to step forward and take on that responsibility.
Yeah.
And when everyone in the family is willing to do that and take that risk and trust each other and trust the family therapist, that's when like good work can be done.
That's awesome.
That's good stuff.
So you mentioned before that the text message would have organized the parents to respond. Can you talk to me just about what, like a child's action organizing parents? I mean, we're in the field, so we kind of understand it, but can you share that a little bit, that concept more broadly?
Take it, Queen.
Oh, you want me to take it? Okay. And so it's a language we use a lot just as therapists. And what we mean by it is that like every behavior, every communication is a way of asking somebody to respond in a particular way, whether it's said or unsaid. So all behavior has communicative value. So we're always communicating, right? That's kind of the basis of it. And so when this young man texts and says, I'm really, really struggling, and what the pattern has been is that when he struggles, the parents jump in. It can be seen as communicating to the parents that I need you, step in. So it's a message being sent to them based on this pattern that has evolved over time. Yeah. And so that statement organizes the parent to operate in the role that they're used to And where we come in as family therapists is to help make that, because it's covert, it's under the radar, they don't know it, is to make it overt. So they recognize that pattern and are able to see him saying that not as requiring them to save him, but just it is a statement. He's voicing it. How can they respond differently so that it's not the same old, same old?
Got it.
Yeah.
Wow.
And the resilience comes in because when they ask him, do you need support? They're inviting him to be resilient by sitting in his distress and calling the shots. And then he chose to weather the storm of discomfort, which had more to it that we had to talk about in terms of like not doing things last minute, being more planful, et cetera, so that he could get his parents off his back, you know? But besides that, he chose the resilient choice and he weathered the storm of distress around feeling like he couldn't complete the first part of his paper and then did.
Yeah.
You know? So like those moments, like adding up over time as a family too, is what creates resilient families too, I think.
Yep. Absolutely.
Resilient families.
Yeah, that's good.
V, in your time, you've been working with young men for
Long time.
many, many years, and obviously,
Long
you know,
time.
social norms change, and you've seen some shifts.
Sure.
I would guess. What would you say? Why would you say young men are struggling to be resilient now versus a decade ago? Like, what factors are causing them to be less resilient now?
Yeah.
And how has it shifted?
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest thing is that, you know, young men are struggling to grow up, you know. I believe, and that's, you know, parallel with every piece of data that we read, every article that we read about how, you know, the time horizon to like be a man and individuate just gets extended, you know. I believe that's rooted in our like egocentricity as a culture, you know, because as a young man and a young woman, like you're just curating your own identity, curating your own brand, posting your own bullshit on social media, and just completely fixated on yourself as an entity, you know, and an influencer and whatever else. And so I think that self-focused nature is like uniquely American. I think that it is, you know, stretched out the, you know, ways that young men have a desire to opt out of being men and being selfless and being community focused and being, you know, wife focused, kids focused, whatever focused. You know, I don't think guys want the responsibility, truthfully. I think they want to sort of be left alone to meet their own needs in whatever way that they see fit. And that's a little bit different, you know, case specific. But suffice to say, I think, you know, men are struggling to grow the fuck up and be men, but grounded in a greater degree of both entitlement and self-centeredness, because of, I believe, you know, the root of it all is sort of the preoccupation with the self and the preoccupation with technology that drives that. So,
I was just thinking as you were talking about how did I cultivate resilience, you know, and I was thinking about the two of you because I think like I'm sitting among two of the most resilient people that I've ever met based on where you've both come from. And I think where I developed it definitely started with my parents, right? And I'm a coach's kid. And so athletics also was a really wonderful opportunity to develop resilience. And I don't think it has to be athletics for young men. I think it can be being a part of anything, right? And being part of any type of group scenario or what have you. But being able to experience disappointment, loss, whether it's like, you know, having the ball stolen like in the last 2 seconds and the other team winning and knowing they stole it from me, right? and knowing I did something wrong and all that kind of stuff, and being able to have a coach who would look at me and said, okay, yes, the play was this and you didn't do that. And it's okay to be upset, but not coddling me.
Yeah.
Right. Like letting me sit in that disappointment. And I think that from one of our last podcasts, we talked about the isolationism with men not being a part of those types of opportunities, whether it's sports, whether it's the arts, whether it's theater, whether it's church community, whatever it is, to experience times when they may fail or they may get it wrong or they may have a relational dynamic go wrong. If they're isolated, they're also not having those opportunities to develop that skill.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm. We had a very real one of those in this house this year.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll go back to football, but just because it's a good example. So we had a game this year where it was us versus another team and the winner was going to the playoffs. Right. So it was like a huge thing for my boys and the house and the team, et cetera. So, back and forth. Finally, it's the fourth quarter and we're down by a little bit. My son, who plays the quarterback, he throws the game-winning touchdown with 51 seconds left. And I mean, honestly, it was probably my proudest moment as a father, pretty close, top 5 for sure. And the whole place is going crazy and his mother's going crazy. And I gave his uncle a big hug and a kiss on the side. It was crazy. It was insane. It was insane. 32 seconds left. They come back. They throw a touchdown to go up and win the game with 11 seconds left, and we lose.
Oh.
And I had 27 kids face down on the ground crying their eyes out. Every single one of them. Every single one of them. And I just pulled them all to the side after the game, and we all got together, and every single one of them is crying hysterically.
There were some parents.
Parents are crying. Grandparents are crying. It's a disaster. And I just remember being filled with such pride in these kids that they had worked so hard and come so close. And I said, this is the I didn't say shittiest, but I want to. I might have actually. I think I did. I think I did actually. I said, this is the shittiest thing for all you guys. And I am so, so sorry for every single one of you because I know how bad you wanted this. And I promise you this will make you better. And I promise you this will make us better. And I promise you that you will learn from this. And I promise you this will change who you are a little bit. And it just spoke to the power of those kind of moments to shape who we are and who become. And sports is such a beautiful metaphor for life anyway. But to see these kids like get hit between the eyes like that and then put their arm around their buddy and walk off, like, is just such a beautiful example of, I think, what resilience can be, and it requires failure. That's the thing. It requires failure. You cannot be a resilient person unless you fail, unless you have shit not go your way. And if you don't, then I believe you're robbed of a great opportunity to cultivate who you are meant to be personally. You know?
Couldn't agree more.
So I regard you as one of the more resilient humans that I know.
I appreciate that.
Talk to me a little bit about some times where you had to be resilient as a kid or a teen.
Yeah.
And it sucked.
So here, this is, I guess, a good example of like, I guess this is the all sports episode, but like, whatever, it's fine. So I remember we moved to Madison when I was 14. So 8th grade, graduated 8th grade, right smack, brand new kid in the high school, literally know no one. My first day, being a kid in high school. So someone came up with the idea. I don't really remember who it was, but, I went out for the football team early, right? So I could meet some kids in the town and get to know some people.
You're cute making friends.
This is me. Mr. Friendship Bracelet over here. That's me. Yep. And so I go out for the varsity team. Now, I'm maybe 120 pounds as a freshman in high school, maybe. And there's guys who are, 250, 300 pounds. And no lie, when I say I got the shit kicked out of me every single day at practice by every single one of these kids, I got the shit kicked out of me every single day at practice by every single one of these kids. But I just kept showing up. And I just kept coming. And I just kept coming. And I just kind of hung around and was like the first freshman kid to play varsity in like many, many years at the high school. Not because I was better than anybody, because they couldn't fucking get rid of me. And I just didn't go anywhere. And so I just, I just wouldn't quit.
Where'd that come from?
Yeah, what enables you to not quit?
Yeah, like that, because you had a lot of shit going on in your life that you shared.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm trying to think of where that came from. I guess, I always, the idea of being great motivated me very much. Like I always respected people who worked to achieve greatness, not just really who showed up great, but like worked to achieve greatness. I always liked movies where there was like Ragnarish's stories and, Michael Jordan got cut from his freshman basketball team. That was like a thing, like a heuristic that stuck in my mind. So like I liked these vignettes of people who persevered in the face of, adversity and kind of like just kept going. And I think I recognized pretty young that like there wasn't a lot of, or I felt at least that there wasn't a lot of exceptional things about me. Like I wasn't exceptionally really anything.
That's not true.
Maybe
there are many exceptional things about my husband.
but maybe that's just hard work and practice too. You don't know. That might be just work ethic. That might not be talent. Right? So, but in any case, I didn't necessarily think there was anything exceptional about me, but I felt like I had the capacity to work hard, and I recognized that hard work yielded. I somehow, somewhere at a pretty young age, I think, was able to connect the dots between input, output with respect to progression and like recognize that shit, if I work hard at this thing, I'll probably get better at this thing. And if I get better at this thing, I can move along towards where I want to go. And I think ultimately it was just that. I wish I had like a really sexy story about like a click-in moment for me, but honestly, I think it grew out of just recognizing that I wasn't very exceptional and would have to overcompensate by, piss and vinegar and hard work ethic. And, here we are. So.
Piss and vinegar.
Yeah. Got a lot of that.
Yeah.
Got a lot of that.
Yeah. What about you? Because I consider you also one of the most resilient humans that I've known. Like, where did that come from for you?
Combination of things. I think that for some people it's just innate in them. And I resonate with what you said, Vince. Like I was not somebody who I had natural talent, but I wasn't someone who had a ton of natural talent that would easily get them into fill in the blank. Like I had to work really intentionally and studiously to I said that word. I never used that word.
Studiously.
It's fun to say
But
that.
I got you. Yeah.
To achieve anything I wanted to. And so I resonate with what you said there. Also just, I was raised very religious and my mother in particular was very, I don't quite resonate with the way that, she shoved God down my throat, particularly as a queer person. What I do resonate with is the consistency with which she instilled the message in me that there was always a presence of love, God, there for me that I could lean on in any moment. And I really took that and cultivated faith, and it became a relationship that I developed with, with God, with my higher power, that I always turned to. Like even when I was 4 years old, I would stand up in the morning and I would like lift my hands up. Like no one knew that I did this. And I would just be like, today is going to be a great day. Like Thank you, God. Like literally on my own.
That's probably the cutest thing I've ever
Can you just imagine little Heather doing that?
Is awesome.
Yeah.
So
I know.
awesome.
So that was a seed that my mother planted in me that I took and I nurtured. And it continues to be what is the foundation of my resilience. If I did not have a relationship with God, I don't think I would have made it through anything. So that for sure, in addition to what you said, Vince, of like knowing that I had natural talent, but I wasn't going to go anywhere if I didn't do the work to cultivate it, paired with, I just think like you have it or you don't. There's a drive in you. You either you have that drive and that hunger or you don't.
Yeah.
And that I just think is kind of like charisma or that like it factor that you see in talent. It's like either someone has it or they don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happens if they don't? Right? Like, so young man, comes in, like, I mean,
Yeah.
when you said before piss and vinegar, right? Like, well, what if you don't got?
Yeah. So it's a good question. I think everyone has the capacity to be resilient in some measure, right? So like, is the next guy going to be as resilient as Vince? Maybe not. But comparing him to him, he can be more resilient than he is right now. And so I think that's really the metric of evaluation. You know, like, are you progressing in your own road towards resilience? Are you someone who has a goal? I think this is something that I didn't mention, which is incredibly important in my own journey. I've always been somebody who makes a goal and gets it done. And that's from as long as I can remember. So things that I don't give a shit about get cast aside very, very quickly, which leads me kind of myopically focused on the very few things that I do care about, which I am completely all in around, right? So whatever goal I have, meet a pretty girl and, get her to fall in love with me, start a business that's going to be successful, even like, make the high school football team and be an all-state football player, as a senior in high school. Those and many others were things that I quickly identified, instantly identified that I wanted to accomplish, developed a sense of importance around, and then bought into immensely and went to fucking go get it. So I think a young man can improve in his progression towards being more resilient by identifying the goal that he wants to pursue, whatever that is. Doesn't really matter what it is, but then setting out on the business of going to make it happen.
I mean, immediately what comes to mind is just all the moms I've talked to that said, my son has no goals.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're saying that the goal is the driver, the fire, if you will, that then enables resilience.
Yeah.
What if there's no goal?
Yeah. That's the work. That's the work. So like, the goal is the driver and the work is going about the business of figuring out the goal. Right. So, which I told you in two episodes ago, like we can figure out pretty quickly with a guy, right? That young man's goal should be somehow rooted in whatever lights him up. And you can figure that out if you listen patiently, observe and read his cues, probably inside of 5 minutes. And I could probably do the same thing with each of you guys. So like, I think when you mine out the right information, you can help someone figure out what their goal is and then construct a plan for them to figure out how to achieve it.
Have you ever had someone sit in your chair and not know, like they had no goals?
Sure. I mean, look, I've been stonewalled before.
What's that look like?
Someone who comes in and wants to fuck your process up and is guarded and boundaried and wounded and uninvested and, thinks they can't be helped really, so somebody who is putting up a barrier like that already believes that they're too far gone and they're past the point of being able to be helped. And so they're just going to jam your shit up for an hour and make it so that you can't get to the root of what the issue is, But I think
that's resilience in and of itself, right? Like jamming up something, like they're just going to keep
I think it is
stonewalling you.
I think it is.
All right,
Absolutely.
so then you know you got something to work with.
Well,
if they can do that.
I think that's a really good point by you. Like it's like if you reflect that energy in the right way, you do know you have something to work with because exactly. Yes, absolutely. If you pin that kid and choke him out, metaphorically speaking, guys.
What's the one where you use somebody's energy?
That's jujitsu. You got it.
You.
Yeah, and that's why I said pin the kid and choke him out because that's also jujitsu. But I was joking because we don't choke people out. But no,
PSA.
You namaste. You take that energy and you flow it in the right direction. I think you can channel that into formulating resilience. Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes I think it comes up in the form of like, I don't know, a lot of, I don't know. And I think if we're with people long enough and we're curious and present and loving with them, that like underneath that, I don't know is a ton of stuff. Like it's fear, it's the pressure that at 18, someone should know what they're quote unquote want to do with their life. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, totally.
Our brains aren't fully developed yet. And that I think is killing so many of the young men's spirits that come through Causeway.
Yeah.
And so like deconstructing that, which from a family systems perspective can be really hard because underneath those I don't knows are often like, I'm so afraid to tell you the truth because I'm worried about my parents' reaction to me telling you that I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I actually don't care that I don't know what I want to do with my life. And I just want that pressure relieved of me so that I can just follow my curiosities. But they don't even know how to voice that, which is like what I witness, I think, the most. Or a young man who is on the autism spectrum who is being expected to behave neurotypical in a non-neurotypical society and being expected to follow a quote unquote traditional path that their caregivers, society, fill in the blank is expecting them to. And they're feeling so much tension and pain around that. But then they don't even know how to express that because as a man, they're socialized to cut off their sense of emotion, vulnerability, feeling, and intimacy. All of this is colliding in one moment.
Yeah. It's a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I have so much empathy for the young men that come through our doors because there's like so much colliding in one moment in one season, and it's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. I think, just building off that, building off everything is if parents can give the message of you've got this.
Yeah.
Right. And sometimes that's hard to give that message, you've got this, but I think that goes so far if done consistently and over time. And the truth is that it doesn't mean that the young man's going to believe it. I mean, how many times have you been told by somebody you got this and internally you're like, I don't fucking got this. Right?
Yeah.
And like the way that, again, I think in metaphors, it's kind of like when you first, if you're a runner and you go from road running to trail running, and you have to start getting used to the terrain on the trail and you're wobbly and things like that. And you're like, I don't fucking got this. Yeah. But you have to build up the agility and the strength in particular parts of your feet and your ankles and your calves to be able to then weather, harder trails and things like that. And so even though it's like, I don't think I have it, it's just going to take some time and continuing to kind of receive that message without somebody coming in and saying, well, why don't you go back on the roads? Why don't you go back on the roads? It's easier that way.
Right. 100%.
Yeah.
And the message too of like, you've got this. And if you don't got this, you might get knocked down.
Yeah.
But I'll get up again.
There it is.
Yes.
There it
Just
is.
full circle. Full circle.
Came back.
Call that a callback.
Yeah.
Believe you.
There you go.
Nice. Well done.
There you go.
What do you say to parents who don't believe their kids got it?
fuck you. Yeah, honestly, like, I mean, honestly,
I mean, we've met some.
Honestly, dead ass. I mean, I've probably, I can count on 25 fingers at least the couples that I've told to go fuck themselves because of their lack of self-belief in their kids. That is the most corrosive agent that could ever exist in a young man's life. The idea that your parents don't believe in you, you know, and if a kid picks up a whiff of that, no matter who he is or how good he is at anything or how much he sucks at anything, you've buried that kid. As soon as you've thrown the rag in on your son, you've buried his ego, you've buried his self-belief, and you've buried his, in my opinion, willingness to step into his own resilience and certainly his own potential. So like when I get moms and dads historically who have said, you know what, my kid is a fuck. I really don't believe he can do, you know, any of these things. I say, fuck you, because you're probably 90% of the reason why that is the case.
I've worked with several families at Causeway where the biggest challenge has been with one of the parents actually seeing something redeeming in their son.
Yeah.
And being able, like, that's part of what their homework is you have to go home and in the next 3 days, write down 3 redeeming things about your son that you are going to randomly articulate to him over the next week. Because sometimes, again, like parents are so jaded, you know, particularly who are coming through our doors at Causeway, because it's been a long road for many of them, and they lose sight of the qualities of their son that need to be nourished and cultivated. And so for me, it really is about, like, I know you see your son this way. That's not going to help his trajectory. It's simply not going to help. So you have to start to reframe the way you're looking at him. And sometimes you're going to have, I know you're going to hold both. Like you're good, like you were saying at the beginning, sometimes you have to hold both feelings and perspectives, and moving more towards what are the things in redeeming in your son that you can actually cultivate.
Do parents struggle to find that?
Some do.
Some do.
Yeah, some do.
Some do.
Takes a while for a handful of them.
Yeah.
I also, sorry, Heather, you go ahead.
I think hand in hand with that too, like, yes, underline, exclamation point. You've had such wonderful conversations that you've shared with me about with parents where you've really helped turn those light bulbs on inside of their heads. And additionally, I think coming back to, it starts with you, because perception is projection. We project onto other people how we feel about ourselves. And so if your perception of your son is that he has no redeeming qualities, then you probably need to look in the mirror at your own perceptions of yourself. Because you're probably speaking to yourself in a way that's incredibly critical and judgmental, and you struggle to find redeeming qualities in yourself. And so if you want to be a good example to your child, you should probably start there and start cultivating a stronger sense of self-perception too.
Yeah. Yeah. Some of those examples that kind of rise to the forefront for me come after abject failure, like undoubted, objective, abject failure. Kid goes to college and like sits in his room and play video games for a semester, doesn't hand any work in, lies to his parents about his grades, and then comes home with 4 Fs on the transcript in December. And parents are like, what the fuck? And, you know, come to find out, like, the kid just didn't go to class and nobody was aware of it, you know? So I think those situations where anger is such an easy go-to emotion for parents are the ones wherein, you know, those kinds of comments about one's worth and one's value and one's capacity are typically communicated, you know? But I think even those can be information, right? Those are so informative about like the nature of the relationship between the kid and his parents, and, you know, what he thinks about how approachable his parents are, and how much they can hold disclosure, and how, you know, how much they've been, you know, a sounding board and a support for him in the past. So Heather, to your point, and I think it's a great one, like, that's mostly just misdirected frustration, you know, and they're probably most angry with themselves, not at the son that they're yelling and screaming and calling a piece of shit, you know?
Yeah. And I think you also spoke to something really important, and why we brought family therapy into at Causeway, is that you can't fill up that leaky bucket all on your own as a clinician. If the structure and system at home can't hold that.
Totally.
Right. It's like you can work in that with that kid in isolation and you send him home to an unchanged system.
Yeah.
Like it's not going to be sustainable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to not believe that.
I know.
I got to be honest. I used
know.
to not believe that. I used to believe, and because I had a lot of success in the beginning with guys and working like one-on-one with kids who were very, very resistant to this work and who people hadn't moved prior, you know? So, you know, some combination of luck and good work and, you know, relational connection, like I experienced success. And so I actually thought that the cheat code was to silo the work and like, you know, forget about home, forget about the family, forget about the parents. Let me just fucking deal with the kid.
Yeah.
You know, just give me the kid and we'll square it up. But the leaky bucket piece completely changed my perspective. And there were so many kids as the years went on wherein we would do good work and things just wouldn't move and it just wouldn't be quite right, or there'd be a blow up at home or a factor that was outside of our collective control in session would hit the table and blow everything up.
Yeah.
So inevitably, like it was very clearly the family that was driving the boat for all the progress and all the things that could be sustainably gained, you know? But I never believed that in the beginning.
I know.
I know. But I also agree with you too, Vince. It's a both and, because I think like the kids that you had success with are like that 1% that we were speaking to who just have that internal drive that is so rare that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'm there. Like that type of a client is a rare client, but they do exist.
Yeah.
And it only takes one person changing to change a system.
Right.
So like, yes, that. And then, but all the other clients are where it needs to be the both and. And we see that as evidenced by like how many, you know, cases that we receive at Causeway too, where the young man has been through 3 or 4 residential programs and none of them work because he keeps returning to an unchanged family system.
That's
he
exactly
gets all the structure, all the boundaries, all the expectations at treatment or at residential, but then those aren't being mirrored in the home.
Correct.
And that's where our work comes in.
Correct.
Both and always.
Both and always.
Both.
Got it.
All right. So
Get knocked out.
exactly.
That's good. That's good.
Parting thoughts for encouraging resilience. What would you tell a kid that needs to know?
Tell a kid or tell his folks or both?
I'd like you to tell the kid.
Yeah.
And then you girls can tell the folks.
Yeah. Awesome. Find your thing. Find your thing. Make a goal. Because I think you need, before you can be resilient, you need to have something to pour into and latch on to, you know, and something to go chase. You're not going to get better at something unless you really give a shit about it and you want to pour yourself into it. So identifying the right thing, I think, is critically important. I've said this for 15 years, everybody has a thing. You know, I think the people in this room are doing their thing, you know, pretty close there too. You know, so find your thing and start moving towards it and do it as, you know, consistently and aggressively as you can.
Replace advice giving with asking agentic questions. Every time you want to give a piece of advice, practice pausing and instead ask a question that forces your son to use his agency.
That's good stuff.
Damn.
Yeah.
Oh,
All
no,
right,
I don't know what I'm going to pull out other than get knocked down.
Also, have dance parties in your house because that will help.
Right, exactly. Again, this is what's just coming to me is no mud, no lotus. So
please say more. Please say more. Wow.
So the wonderful Buddhist teacher Thich Nhat Hanh said, "No mud, no lotus." And if anybody knows, like a lotus is just a gorgeous, gorgeous flower, but how it grows into such beauty is it's in mud and shit, and like that's what it grows out of. And so I often think of that when I'm thinking about hard times and when we get knocked down by things, is that we have to be in the shit to grow into
No, thank you.
the beauty
No facts, though.
that we can be. And so I just think remembering that sometimes we're gonna be in the shit, but we're gonna kind of if we do what both of you are saying on a young man front and on a parent front, I think you're gonna just see the beautiful lotus.
Wow. That's good.
Yeah, amazing. Such a beautiful, it's a book too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's great.
Yeah.
All right.
So
So?
a sure thing. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.
That's a wrap.
And cut.
Cut.